Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, How the Outside Makes the Inside Better. I am Jeanne Gallagher, and I'm here with Denise Stegall, our longevity concierge.
Hello,
Hey,
hello.
Denise. I love saying
I'm back.
concierge. And we're all a little silly today because we're talking about happiness. We just finished talking about happiness and joy, and we're going to talk about happiness and choices, right? And choosing to be
Yes,
happy, maybe.
yes, things you can, yes. Um,
So tell us about it.
so so many of my clients come to me and the first thing, they're unhappy. They're frustrated with how they look. They're exhausted because of the way they feel. They feel weighed down, because they're overwhelmed and they feel like they have no sense of fulfillment, right?
Mhm.
Um, most of my, but midlife, I mean, all through life, but really midlife throws curveballs at us all the time. Um, the challenge that I put upon these women is that, or that these women have, is they don't actually realize that they have the power to break free from this cycle of unhappiness, no joy,
Mhm.
and create their own life that's vibrant, purposeful, satisfying. Um, Again, joy and happiness, they go together, and it's really happiness, joy. Happiness is, kind of how you feel in the moment. Um, but think about it. It's about the choices that we make every day that actually can bring us a step closer to happiness, step closer to joy, right? We can feel happiness in the moment. I just ate a donut. Actually, didn't you just eat a donut? But here's an example. I ate a donut. I feel happy in the moment. I just got my sugar high, right? In the long term, I'm going
Not
to
so
have
happy because the sugar high
not
goes
so
away
happy. I'm going to
quickly.
have a sugar dip, right? And I'm going to feel tired and lethargic. And if my goal in life or whatever is to maintain a healthy weight, did that donut, if it's one donut, not a big deal. If it's a dozen donuts, how did that donut affect my ability to be happy and experience joy because I've maintained my healthy weight? Or for those women in midlife who want to lose weight, people will say, oh, it's just a donut, it's no big deal. These decisions add up because it's a donut today and it's a cookie tomorrow. And, little things like that add up. It's something like an extra calorie a day. And because I talk about food so much, I always have a food reference. An extra calorie a day over the course of the year, right? Or over the course of 10 years is almost 10 pounds of weight gain.
Wow.
And I've done the number, and I know I've done the numbers in my head, or actually, my husband's done the numbers in his head. But think about that, like just one, So if we're having a donut, and that brings us over our calorie um, allotment that's good for our body, right? Each one of us is different. That's where we see, weight gain just kind of creep up,
It
especially as
creeps
we
up
get
over
older.
time, and then all of a sudden you look back and you go, holy cow, what just happened?
Yeah, what just happened started 10 years ago.
Right.
Right.
And it
So
comes down to choices.
it does.
There we
It
are.
comes down to it's really the byproduct of those choices,
Mhm.
right? Big or small, you know, short-term gratification, long-term happiness, joy. Right. So that
So
I think is
what
really
kind of
important to think.
choices can really bring us contentment and the joy that we should be looking for?
I think this is different for everyone.
Mm.
So choices, again, if you want to maintain a healthy lifestyle, or if you want to start a healthy lifestyle, um, choices like having a piece of fruit over a bag of chips. It doesn't have to be these huge things. If you want to look huge thing, um, do you buy, you need a new car, okay? Say you need a new car. Do you buy the $150,000 car that looks really freaking cool? Or do you buy the $50,000 car, which is still pretty cool, but you can afford better, right? What's going to make you, when it comes to that choice, which choice do you make? They're both in the short term going to make you happy. Will one of them make you happier? That's the question to ask yourself.
Mm.
Will this decision make me happy? And I think it's something we can actually ask ourselves in anything. If it's a relationship, you know, I have a pretty good relationship with my husband, so I'm trying to pick on him and I can't. What? Oh,
That's not a bad problem to have.
that's not a bad problem to have. Um, well, I'm gonna okay. So say this. I am gonna pick on him because I'm allowed. There's one thing that Mark does, and I'm not gonna talk about it, but one thing that he does that drives me crazy. Now say it's 5 or 10% of his personality. 90% of his personality is awesome.
Mhm.
Am I going to choose to let this 10% that kind of annoy me and ignore the other 90 amazing percent?
Well, that's a great analogy, because we can all think of family and friends that there's something that they eat with their mouth open. I don't know, something that you would clarify as, or as obnoxious or annoying. And
Mhm.
but what's the rest of it look like? And that's something that people can put into perspective for themselves, because if you're choosing to focus on the negatives, that's a whole nother conversation. Never
Mhm.
mind just making the choices part that we're talking about today.
Mhm.
Where is your focus? If you're focusing on the negative here, what other parts of your life are you focusing on the negatives too? And those choices could be as
Absolutely.
simple as, just go outside for a second.
Mhm.
Go walk around the house. Go walk around the block. Go outside and for 10 minutes. We're not looking
Yep.
at, taking the afternoon off and throwing off everybody's schedule, but step outside. Put a coat on first if you have to. There's so many excuses that we can come up with when we're trying to make these choices towards happiness. It's easy not to
Right.
do
And
it.
and to your point, if it's sunny out and you go out for 5, 10 minutes, the sunlight is uplifting. All of
Mhm.
a sudden it uplifts your mood. You just, and not just you like the way you feel like internally, but externally you smile.
Mhm.
It's kind of hard to be like, oh, to the weather, blah, 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 when it's sunny and nice out. I'm sure looking at myself again, I'm going to regret making that face.
That's a good
Um,
face for radio.
it's a great face for radio. All right. So again, it's, choices, the choices that you make can either bring you closer to happiness and joy, or it can take you in the opposite direction.
Mhm.
So be aware of your choices. Um, Along those lines, the second thing I think of is, we talk about this quite a bit, is when it comes to goals, right? We've talked about this many, many times. Um, how many times does somebody say, okay, especially around the new year, and we had these conversations, right? I'm going to work out 5 days a week. Well, if you're a person who's never worked out 5 days a week, that's a lofty goal. It's
If
kind
you've
of a
never worked
dumb
out
goal,
one day a week, 5 is hard.
right? So the goal here should be, or could be, instead I'm gonna work out 1 day a week and get that, under your belt. And then when you do that, like, you can be happy. Like, you've achieved something, you've accomplished something, as opposed to thinking, oh, I didn't get a workout today. So, well, still got 5 days. I've still got 6 days. Well, I didn't do it again Tuesday. Well, it's Wednesday. I still have 5 days. But then if you miss one more day, then there's only 4 days left. You can work out those 4 days, but if you don't, or even if you do, you kind of go, oh, well, I didn't work out 5 days.
You're mentally
And
behind
rather than
already.
feeling accomplished that you did 4 or 3,
Hmm. Yeah.
you're disappointed, and frustrated with yourself. So goal setting in this, concept of happiness is really, really important. We talk about the SMART goals and everything like that. Usually, we talk about it in business, but much more often. But this is something to really put into perspective when you're in a place where you're unhappy and you want to change the way you feel about yourself, about your situation, about life. Little steps get you closer. Little forward steps get you closer to a goal, to happiness, than any kind of negative step that's going to bring you backwards. I think I said that right.
I think you did too. It
Okay.
made sense to me.
Good. And then I think the last thing I would say about this is progress over perfection. You know, we really are an all or nothing society, especially in the United States.
That's a great point.
And it can only set you up for failure and disappointment. Failure and disappointment is unhappiness, and it's so far from the spectrum of joy. So progress, a little bit at a time, like I was just saying, one little step at a time.
And if you journal those little steps, you're going to be able to look back and realize what you did. Because if they're just, if not, I should say just, if they are little steps, it's easy to forget they happened.
Absolutely. There's somebody that I follow, his name is Brian Johnson. He calls all of these little things that you these little positive things, he calls them plus ones. And it's kind of funny. When I first read it, I was like, okay, that seems interesting. But it's amazing when you add up during the day all the little positive things that initially you wouldn't have thought of, like you said, but just those little things, just little plus one. Add them up at the end of the day, add them up at the end of the week, and you will notice, wow, you actually are doing things in small increments that are actually bringing you closer to where you want to be.
Fantastic. Denise, thank you so much. Make good choices. Work towards
Make good
happiness.
choices and be happy. Don't worry. Be happy.
Hello, everyone. This is Jeanne Gallagher, Discover Rising Tides, and I want to just take a moment to talk about my friend, Denise Stegall. I am honored to call her as a friend, and I'm so grateful that she gives us her insight during our shows, each show, and talks about healthy living, eating real food. You hear Denise say, eat real food a lot. Well, she means it, and she knows what she's talking about. She is an amazing healthy living coach, curator at Living Healthy List. And if you ever have any questions about what is real food, why does it matter, how does that apply to me, how do I change, what do I need to do, how do I even create a healthy living shopping list, make sure that you call her. She is your healthy living coach, and you can find her at healthylivinglist.com. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Discover Rising Tides, how the outside makes the inside better. My name is Jeanne Gallagher, and I'm very excited to introduce everybody to Whitney Fallon. Hey, Whitney, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
Very well, thank you. And so Whitney is a holistic wellness practitioner, and she's going to give us a little bit give us a little bit about your background, and then we can get started.
Yeah. So for years, I've watched high achieving, heart centered individuals kind of push through exhaustion and stress, working as a nurse practitioner in the hospital in acute care, seeing the sickest of the sick. Went through my own kind of health crisis and kind of went into a deep dive into root cause evaluation and looking more into holistic natural solutions. Led me down many paths into neurolinguistic programming, hypnosis, energy healing, lots of other things, just connecting with nature and just realizing how we can heal our bodies from the inside out. Kind of just led me down that journey. And eventually I noticed that more people were reaching out asking how can they make these changes, and that kind of led me to creating the Wellness Renovation coaching experience that kind of blends some of that science, strategy, and a lot of the soul piece to kind of redesign your life for energy, abundance, and true alignment.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So what was that transition like? Because I love how you put high achieving, heart-centered individuals, because people that are in that in the medical field really are all of that. They're there to make a difference, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very challenging space.
It is. Most of them are very empathetic. They care a lot about, other people, but it's also evolved and changed. There's a lot more technology involved. A lot,
Mhm.
the last time I was at the hospital visiting a loved one, it was like the nurse's phone just kept buzzing and binging the whole time. Like, does it ever stop? Like, how did your nervous system relax in an environment in that way? And I think that's how a lot of them get burnt out because it's go, go, go and it's give, give, give. And a lot of times they become overworked and overwhelmed in that situation. I know that's kind of how I felt, especially during COVID when it was, chaotic and a lot more heightened anxiety and frustrations
Mm.
going on. But many people still, they have this just like soul piece about them and this mission to want to help other people. So it's really kind of finding what is in an alignment with that. I eventually went when I was going through my health crisis, I knew I needed to go do something different. And I'd had that
Mhm.
calling for a while and I was putting it off. And I think that's kind of what led to that discord and this, disease that was happening in my body because I wasn't following my soul's purpose.
Mm.
I was trying to muddle through and keep pushing forward and keep going on. Didn't want to lose that steady paycheck, and that's where I learned that I was starting to burn out and I needed to shift and find something new for me.
Isn't it interesting how the body is saying, hello, hello, and then all of a sudden they say, what the hell? You're not listening to me. and and
Yes,
and it
yes.
comes out in that big huge exclamation point of, if you're not going to listen, I'm going to make sure that you're hearing me. And it's interesting that you're saying that because we recently had a wonderful conversation with another guest, and Erin Erin Owens Mayhew, and we've had her on the show a couple of times, and she had a health crisis as well because she was just overworked in her business and she wasn't listening to her body, and the body did exactly the same thing that you're talking about, and it's caused her to it caused her to shift her business, but the shift was actually so positive.
Mhm.
And it's hard. So how is the shift for you and working through your health issues, and did it make you question the field that you're in, or how did you get from one point to the other?
Yeah, that's such a great question. For me, I already kind of had that inkling that I was not in the right space. I mean, I knew I was in the space to be able to help other people and really listen. And I was lucky to be able to kind of be in a hospital setting where I had some leeway to be able to kind of sit and talk a little bit longer with some people, depending on my schedule and patient load and what was going on for the day. But, I kind of realized that I wanted to be able to educate and be able to help people prevent what happened or to
Mm.
be able to rebound and recover from what was going on and how to prevent that from happening again. Because I know I'd often had seen some of the same patients over and over again with the
Mhm.
same problems. And, with some of them, I was able to kind of talk or follow up with when I was working in the office setting as well, and be able to help them create some lifestyle habits and shifts and changes that made big impacts on themselves. And I knew that when I was going through what I was going through, that I needed to make some lifestyle changes. I mean, I kind of got shoved out the door because it was COVID and I had to have a surgery and I could only work like 3 days. And I was told my job couldn't accommodate that and was kind of like, okay, you're on your own. Lost my insurance right before having to have this big
Mm.
surgery.
Oh
So,
my.
it kind of hit me from all sides. It was, the financial impact, the emotional impact, the mental strain of it all, the physical, what was going on with my body. It was a lot of different things. And then the spiritual side too, even like what am I supposed to be? What am I
Mm.
supposed to do? And the slowing down was what was magical because it allowed me to have that space to allow my body to heal, but also get
Mhm.
more into that creativity space to learn what truly was in alignment with me, what really lit me up. And, I think for me, it was tuning more into my body and having that awareness of what was going on, um, and being able to figure out the best ways to support it, learning what wasn't working and what was working. So I've had a connective tissue problem and I've passed out probably over 30 times in my life, which is quite scary.
Oh,
Um, so like I had already learned how to kind of manage some of that, but what I noticed was when I tried to really, rehab my lifestyle throughout the years, I would push myself too much. I try to follow whatever fad diet was going on or do this exercise regimen that a coach or trainer was working with me, and it just wasn't working with me, and it wasn't in alignment with who I am and how my body works. So I think the biggest thing was really learning and paying attention to my intuition and paying attention to my body and how it was responding. Um, and, one of the other big things was connecting with nature,
mhm.
getting out. I've always been a big nature person, but being able to live in a place where I can go out barefoot and walk on the ground and, hug a tree if I wanted to, or walk through the woods and look for mushrooms. Like just to be able to explore nature and create more of that calm, was a big thing that helped my nervous system during that healing process.
You're speaking my language. If we were meant to wear shoes, we would have been born with them on our feet.
Right,
That's my
right.
saying. and it's always for me, it's always, this is, people are going to get offended by this and whatever. At this point, I really don't care. But in the summertime, my feet are clean, but they're black because it's just, I'm barefoot all the time. And so it's that point of, yeah, you know what? My feet are clean. I just washed them, but I'm barefoot, and then we're meant to be barefoot, and to be in an environment that allows you that connectivity with nature. And I also want to point out for the people that are watching this on YouTube versus just listening, is that your background isn't a YouTube background. It is the real thing, because you are sitting, you said you have a tower in your backyard that you're sitting in, and those are real trees, and you are outside. And so, well done. Well done, Whitney.
Yeah,
Uh,
now working with clients, it's nice to be able to, this could be my office, sitting outside and
mhm.
being with them. And a lot of my clients are like, "Why aren't you out outside today?" when I am inside when it's rainy or something else going on, because they love connecting with some of the nature. And some of the time, we do walking visits where, I encourage them to go outside themselves, and we're kind of going through our sessions while we're walking, because I feel like just being out in nature, moving your body just helps release a lot of those emotions.
Mhm.
So nature is definitely a big thing when it comes to our nervous system, to grounding, regulating, and helping our bodies to really process through some of that
Yeah,
as well.
it does make such a huge difference. And so, based on what you're saying too, as you're meeting with people and you're walking outside, how do you feel that they're integrating with the work differently than if you were sitting inside and having that same conversation? Is there a way to understand the differences of the environment and how that affects your ability or their ability to help themselves?
Yeah. So, one of my clients kind of said it the best. She was like, I feel like when I'm out walking and we're doing our talks, like I'm not in my head. I can really get
Mm,
out of my head and feel more in my heart space. And I feel like I can actually open up a little bit more and release a little bit more of what's going on. That, being inside, especially when they, are in their home office or a space that they're typically in work zone, it's harder to open up to some of those more deeper emotional layers or be honest with really what's going on with their bodies, because they feel like they're in that work mode and having to put on a front or mask. And so
mm,
being out moving and walking and allowing that energy to flow allows that things, and it allows it also that it's not as intense when they are processing through some of those emotions, they're able to really release them a little bit more,
Mm,
and just have more ease, at the end of the session or what we're working through, just to have more kind of calm with it. And sometimes even when we are inside and they are in their office, I'm having them move their body or do some things to kind of help shift some of that energy, because, we're not meant to just sit in one space all the time. Um,
mm,
there's a lot of things are energy that move and flow. And so moving your body allows some of that energy to move and flow and not be stagnant and stuck within us.
And something you said really stuck out to me too when you were saying that, putting on a front or a mask. That was a
Mm-hmm.
really an interesting way to look at it, because I can also understand the difference if I'm sitting here inside, or if I'm sitting outside, and there's this piece of relief that happens, or an easiness that happens outside, and I never thought of it as a mask. Or if people are inside, maybe they're not allowing themselves to really integrate with who they are, or it takes longer to get to that point than it might be if you're when you're outside. Taking a deep breath is different.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it definitely is a lot different. Um, I think the masking thing too comes along. I work with a lot of neurodivergent individuals, and especially women that don't even realize how much they put on that mask. Not just like
Hmm.
a makeup mask, but like putting on a mask of like having to be a certain person around certain people, like that chameleon trying to fit in,
Hmm.
or they have to be in mom mode, or they have to be in work mode, or a different kind of vibe. And so sometimes having that mask, they're not really allowing themselves to be who they are. And the more
Hmm.
that they're suppressing that authenticity of really who they are and how they process things, that starts to really impact their body, impact
Mm.
their nervous system. Like we see it a lot in the children, like when they're at school and they got to sit and pay attention, everything. Then when they get home, they're like wild and crazy and running around trying to release all that energy that they've pent up inside. Because that's a form of masking, of like trying
Mhm.
to be in that zone and then be able to release all that. It takes a lot more work and more time to kind of allow that, instead of allowing it that in spurts. That's why it's really important to have that, you know, time in your day where you just have some resets, whether it
Mhm.
be 5 minutes to just deep breathing, whether it be go for a walk during your lunch, just having some of those pivotal times in your day when you can have a timeout, shutting down that brain for just those few little bits of time can really help your brain to shut off when you need to go to sleep. Working in sleep medicine for years, a lot of people coming in, just, I can't shut my brain off. I
Mhm.
can't go to
Mhm.
bed because it just is like, especially moms that have like a million to-do list of like everything they need to do. Like I can't just shut it off. And it's because we haven't really practiced shutting our brains off and allowing our brains to be paused and stopped for a while. And so the
Mm.
more that we learn to practice that and have that time out in nature, or time to breathe, or sometimes you just need a snack and a nap. That's what one of my friends said. Just to kind of reset,
A snack and a nap.
sometimes you just need to pay attention to the basics. Yeah.
And it's easy to say, well, you know what, I've got so much to do here, and 5 minutes isn't going to make any difference if I were to step outside for 5 minutes. So I'm just going to plow through all of this. However, that reset is really important, because just taking that 5 or 10 minutes to reset could make a difference in your ability to perform those last few things at the same quality that you might have earlier in the day.
Yeah, definitely. There's scientific studies about it, for productivity and stuff, that you have to have certain breaks to kind of allow your brain to kind of settle back down, especially if you're doing something that is stressful or
Mhm.
overwhelming. Working in the hospital, there were times when, it was like a near death, they were on the verge of dying and doing CPR, and that was a lot to give during that moment. And so sometimes I had to take some time to kind of decompress from that and rest before I go on to the next patient. So I'm not in that revved up mode either. To be able to think clearly and stuff, and not being in that critical moment.
Mm. And you mentioned that you work a lot with neurodivergent individuals. And before I want to dive into that just a little bit, but can you also explain for the listeners exactly what is it's a term that's very common to hear lately, or it's shown up on my radar lately, but can you explain quickly really what it's like to be neurodivergent, and what does that really mean?
So, this term wasn't really coined until like the late 70s, but essentially to
Really,
kind of explain
that
it,
long ago?
yeah.
Wow, I had no idea, because it seems like it's just shown up more recently than that. I had no idea.
I think because it's on people's radar more, and a lot more people are starting to get the diagnosis or to get awareness
Mm.
that, there was something going on. Um, but neurodivergent, it's just basically means that your brain beats to its own drum. It has its own rhythm. It's kind of unique. Um, the way, I kind of explain it from my experience is that kind of relate it to like a computer. I feel like many times my brain has multiple tabs open. And you know how sometimes if you have one YouTube video playing and then something else pops up like a podcast and you're hearing both at the same time?
Mhm.
Well, a lot of times my brain can do that. In a big crowded area, I may be having a conversation with someone, but I may be noticing this new person walking in. I may be noticing there's a dog over there. I may be noticing that this is a mess over here. Or, like perception wise, I can see a lot of different things all at once, but I can still filter and still have that conversation, even though sometimes it may not seem like I am within the conversation because I'm not looking directly at you, or I glance over here or something's caught my attention. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I'm not fully immersed still in that conversation. It's like my brain can be able to do multiple different things at once, but sometimes that can be a little chaotic if there's too many things going on at once. Then things just don't run as quick or as smooth. It may take me a little bit longer to respond or filter out, what's going on. Um, and to really, with the neurodivergence and just in general, like understanding how your brain works, how you process things, is super important because, we're not all the same type of learners. Some of us learn better by watching a video. Some learn better by hearing something. Some learn better by
Mhm.
reading. Some learn better by doing it and practicing. And sometimes it takes multiple of those things to kind of really let it sink in. But that's kind of the thing, like our brains all work differently. But for neurodivergence, it can be kind of working on various different aspects at the same time. And that can be overwhelming. And especially when it's still going, all those tabs are open. Having that time out in nature
Mm.
and stuff like that, that helps to kind of close down some of those and reset. I think of like back in the 90s when they used to have to like let your computer compress all these files into the little file, that's what our brains do when we sleep. And so many people do not value their sleep, that term like sleep when you're dead, or, like I can sleep again tomorrow. I need to like rush through all of this. Well, if you don't allow your brain to really be able to consolidate a lot of that, to kind of shut things down and reconnect those things, then it can be going on haywire and not be able to operate and function as well. It may slow down. It may, create a leak of energy somewhere else. So understanding more about how your body is unique and how it works, especially for the neurodivergence who it's different for each one of us.
Mhm.
You know, some people, it's a little bit more intense than others, but understanding what works for you is the most important thing. Because I know most
Mm.
of the time we're trying to follow, you know, what society's doing, those fad diets, or, you know, what this person's doing. Like, I know kind of, you know, working in a field, it's like, okay, you got to get up early, you got to go, 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 push hard. You know, as entrepreneurs, sometimes we get in that rat race of we got to do more, 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 more. But sometimes we actually move quicker and, and more efficiently when we allow
It,
those breaks and that time to reset.
yeah. So to go slowly, to go quicker. It's a thing in many different areas, and just that slowing down piece. But I love that explanation about the multiple tabs that are open, and that really helps create a picture of what it must be like if you're feeling in that manner, and how important our sleep really is, and the function of sleeping really is, in order for us to show up and the next day to tackle everything that's going to come at us, and tackle it in a way that serves ourselves.
Yeah.
And so when you're working with people, what does that look like? You've explained a little bit about it, in the fact that you're able to be flexible enough to meet with people outside, or what is the process of your coaching system, and how does that work?
Yeah. So the process initially is just being able to get to know one another and getting to
Hmm.
understand you know, one of the first things that I love to do is a more comprehensive assessment where we really dive deep. And it's not just like going to a new doctor and going through the checklist of my past medical history, medicines, and things. No, it's diving deeper into how was your birth? You know, how was your childhood? What were some experience that you had? Sometimes mapping out a timeline of what has gone on in your life. Really paying attention more into what are some of those symptoms or signs that your body is showing. How can we tap into that a little bit more? What I love doing during that session as well is actually doing one of my heal sessions, which stands for health, energy, alignment, liberation. And what we do is kind of a guided meditation, helping you to kind of tune into what is kind of your future vision of being healed. What does that look like? And identifying some of those gaps of what are those challenges right now that are keeping you from getting to where you want to be. And
Mm.
oftentimes during that, sometimes I get a certain age or certain emotion or something that kind of comes through, that may be something that's blocking or hindering you from moving forward for that. And how can we kind of process that? So it is not just kind of a typical practitioner kind of relationship. It's very much developing a relationship and collaborating with one another on what can we do to kind of help move things forward. So sometimes I will give some suggestions, or work with them on how can we shift this and make it feel easier? How can we adjust what's going on to help your body not feel so heavy or intense in those different times? So we create an action blueprint plan together on what you can start doing and focusing on those main things of what your goals are. So really, during the process, there's some coursework and things for you to do on your own to really figure out what area of life, or dimension, as I call it, of understanding are you wanting to work on? What are your goals? You know,
Mhm.
because I think when we're trying to fix something, when we just are throwing darts here and there and we're not looking at a target of where we're throwing it to, it's going to be a lot harder to hit that target. So really just kind of diving deeper and finding out how unique you are, finding out really what your goals are, what's kind of blocking you from that, and working through that to help you really achieve that.
And you're also giving people the tools figure out how to learn about themselves, which
Hmm.
helps the process as well, rather than just telling them something.
Right. That's the one thing that I felt very out of line with working in the medical field. That, a lot of times we were told, you look at your differential diagnosis of what could be going on, you kind of decide what you think's the main problem, and you give a prescription, for that. But
Hmm.
sometimes, there may be options, especially nowadays. There's so many different options and
Hmm.
prescriptions or different things. And so a lot of times I would educate my clients on what they are, what the side effects could be, and help them kind of make an informed decision about which way to go. But that takes time. And a lot of times I was, encouraged by leadership or other people. No, you just need to tell them what to do. Some people just need to be told what to do. And I will
Hmm.
say some people prefer that because that's what they're used to. So I just want someone to tell me what to do. I just want to hit the easy button,
Right.
but sometimes if I just tell you what to do, it may not work out for you. And so that's also the important piece of having those regular check-ins to say, okay, we decided on this. Is that working out? What is working? What's not working? How can we adjust it to make that work? And I focus a lot more on, lifestyle and natural solutions to kind of helping. But what I also love doing is a genetic test. It's not checking all the really bad things that you do, but it's looking into more what's going on a cellular level and how your body is uniquely designed so that we can help support you in what are the best types of exercise. How can we prevent some
Mm.
cardiovascular or blood sugar things if those are your goals? How can we improve your cells to work better, to help you detox, to help your brain and memory? And so that helps to kind of more laser focus what really we can do that's going to work for your unique body type. Then, just picking random things and trial and error and seeing how it goes. So it gives us more targeted solutions to be able to work with.
Well, that's fantastic. And it throws a bit of the science into it so that you can be more specific with, or more individualized with each person. And I think too that also helps teach the individuals more about themselves, and having that piece of foundation of knowing here's what we're going to work on now. Here are some things to look for and observe, and what are you finding and what are you learning, and here's why we're doing this, also can help build a foundation. Because I don't know about you, but social media tells me what's best for me all the time. Right. And we're inundated
Uh-huh.
with all these things that are better for us, and because that's the AI that's driving something to us, or whatever, for whatever reason. And so it's easy to ping pong back and forth by all these shiny new things that are showing up. But if you have a foundation of, okay, so I know that this is why I'm doing this, and these are the things that I'm looking for, you're getting a cause and effect, that you're building an integrative system within yourselves to help discern what might or might not work, that's like coming externally at you.
Yeah, definitely. Being able to better learn how your body works,
Hmm.
that one genetic test, it's not like a test you repeat over and over and adjust. Like that is your unique blueprint. And once you start learning more about how you're uniquely designed, that can help. Like for me, example, I didn't know I had a genetic mutation that impacted how my body methylated or kind of broke things down, how I could
Mm.
detox. And I was always so sensitive to medications. And like I took a non-drowsy Dramamine and slept for 3 days when I was supposed to be on this like college convention that I paid all this money for. And I was like, man, I wanted to be a part of that. Like that was awful. Um, but when I actually learned about my genetics and I learned that I have, this very rare kind of type where I only have like 25% function, and that there were
Mm.
certain things that I needed to do or incorporate or avoid to be able to
Hmm.
make sure that my cells worked well, to be able to detox, that was life changing.
Oh,
To
wow.
know like why I would feel a certain way when I ate certain foods, certain foods would bloat me or make me have headaches or feel irritable. Even just like regular vitamin B12, which they have put that thing in all kinds of drinks, even vitamin waters, all of that. I'm like, oh, I'm getting healthy. This is supposed to help with fatigue and energy. And I would get stinky, sweaty pits and feel irritable and feel like my heart's racing. And I'm like, why do I feel this way? Like, what is going on? Because I learned that my body is unique and it cannot process that. I don't have the things
Interesting.
to break that down and get rid of it. So, like you said, it's a foundation. It is
Mhm.
really kind of understanding those unique foundational things about you that can stay with you for the rest of your life. So I know probably even in 20 years, like that regular B12 is still going to affect me in that way, because I know how my body operates. So I know how to look for certain things or avoid things or make sure I'm giving myself the correct things to make it
Mhm.
be able to work the way it's supposed to.
And you self-advocate and can make some really very much informed decisions on activities, food intake, etc. That's going to really positively impact you and where you physically need to be and mentally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's really interesting too is your path and your personal experiences really have led you to where you're in a wonderful position to serve people and integrate your learned experiences for yourselves, which is everything you're telling people to do, but you're integrating your learned experiences in order to benefit them and teach them about how they can learn about their own learned experiences. It's a beautiful circle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's so powerful to understand even just the basics of how your body operates. Like I
Hmm.
wish that's something they taught in schools, at a younger age to really understand more about how your body works. Because that is super powerful to know how your body filters things. Your liver is a powerhouse that kind of decides a lot of things, and what we put in has to usually filter through our liver. And so
Mm.
understanding, that what we're putting in can impact that is a huge thing to know. But I think learning how to restore one's health and well-being and kind of renewing that whole process, it is very unique.
Hmm.
And that's kind of what I love about what I do is I'm not, like I said, prescribing or giving, this. I'm helping to collaborate and help you to understand more of what's going on in your body, how your body works, maybe what's broken or not working correctly, to be able to kind of repair and renovate that.
Somebody said, "Gee, I wonder if I should be working with Whitney. What are some indicators that it's might be maybe be a I don't know if be a good fit isn't the right way to put this, but what are some indicators that say, you know what, maybe I should give Whitney a call or I'm needing of these services."
Yeah. So a lot of the people that have come to me, they've gotten to that point where they feel stuck. They feel overwhelmed by
Mm.
all the information. They don't know what they should be doing. One doctor's telling them to do this, another doctor's telling them to do something else. Maybe they have, been to tons of specialists and people are like, we don't know what's going on. Or you feel like there is something off and you know that something's not right, but you're being told everything looks fine. Um,
Mm.
that's oftentimes where I see people get to that point before they kind of come see me. But even people who just want to, maybe they feel better, they feel fine, they're doing well, but they want to make sure that their systems are working well.
Mhm.
I see a lot of athletes that like to come and kind of talk about, or people in the military, how can I optimize my body to work optimal to make sure that I'm of sound mind and that I am, doing what I'm supposed to do. I had one client who came to me and super healthy, vegetarian, marathon runner, doing all the right things. And he had a heart attack. And he was
Wow.
like only 38 or, he was young. And he was like, why, why did this happen? And I don't want to be on these medicines for the rest of my life, So digging deeper and learning more, like that endurance, long running, actually his body wasn't able to detox from the muscle breakdown in those longer runs. So just even shifting his exercise regimen to do more strength training or more sprint runs, a shorter distance, was a huge impact on how his body could function and operate, giving him the right nutrients and things to support his cholesterol and support his body's detox process. Now he's saying he's feeling the healthiest that he's felt. He's happier, he's healthier, and he's off a lot of the medicines that he was on. So, I think it's just if you're at that point where you want to know more about your body, you want to kind of learn about what is unique about you and be able to create a plan that works for you.
That's fantastic. What a great story. And so how do people get in touch with you?
So they can go to my website, www.woodedlakewellness.com. If you do /services, that'll take you directly to like my booking page. But you can check it out there, or you can find my link tree. That's where I have a lot of workshops, resources, a lot of different things on there. And that's tr.ee/Wooded Lake Wellness. And that has all the different things that are going on there.
Perfect. Wow, this has been a fascinating conversation, Whitney, and thank you so much for sharing your personal story as well as how you're affecting people in such a positive manner. And sitting outside to do it even makes my heart sing. So
Yes.
thank you so much for being with us today, Whitney.
Thank you so much for having me and holding this space to talk about this and how that outdoors can really impact, our inner world is a big thing. So I thank you for being here and for having me.
Thank you so much for listening today. Today's show is sponsored by Seaside Solutions, my financial services company. As a business owner, it's easy to be pulled in many different directions, and often taking care of yourself plummets to the bottom of the list. For me, I find myself outside to reground. My time outdoors helps me manage my day more effectively and be more present for my clients. Through this, Discover Rising Tides was born. At Seaside Solutions, we truly believe that education is the foundation of financial wellness. Our primary focus is to provide guidance that is designed to help you achieve your long-term financial goals and visions. Working with a plan allows space for doing more things that you love, like being outside to make the inside better. If I can help you create or realign your plan, or if you would like to be added to my weekly newsletter, please let me know. This week's topic was 5 ways to set more achievable goals. Your referral means the big, beautiful world to me, and if I can help, please let me know. And thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.